Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach, Chag HaAtzmaut Sameach to everyone. It's a thrill to have the privilege to speak to everyone. Obviously sentimental, given Rav Mordechai said for many years my father-in-law has had the chus to sponsor tonight's events. He's been in the hospital with Corona since Hanukkah. He has not seen his home or his family in a very, very long time. But Baruch Hashem, he's on the road to recovery, and Baruch Hashem, next year he'll be with us celebrating. With all of you. So this past Shabbos, I was talking to a friend of mine, my RA from Yeshiva University, the guy that's in charge of the dorms, my particular floor. And he lives in the neighborhood. How was Pesach? Pesach was great. He spent it with his brother. It was the first time they had like a family celebration in a year, obviously, with Corona and all. And then he mentioned to me that at the Seder, his brother asked, his brother is Zev, I'm gonna give names to make it less complicated. His brother Zev asked, Daniel's my friend, asked Daniel's son, his brother Zev asked Daniel's son, Eli, he asked Eli, tell me, when I say Israel, what do you think of? What do you think when I say Israel? So Eli said, home. Home. Zev says to him, that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer. He asked me what I think. I think about home. No, an American living in America will also tell you, when you ask him, America is home. And the French person living in France will tell you that France is home. And the Spaniard living in Spain will tell you that Spain is home. And the Canadian living in Canada, maybe not the Canadian in Canada, I don't know. but Australian, right? So that's not the answer. He's like, what's the answer? So Zev tells him the answer is Reshit Tzmichat Gulatin. He says it dramatically, and Eli says, okay, pass the matzo balls. But I wanna talk to you about the mistake that Zev made. And say, not the Reshit Tzmichat Gulatin part. I don't wanna, maybe no, we'll find that. I want to talk to you about the mistake that he made when he said that he was wrong for saying home. He was steeped, ironically, because he lives here and he talks about Ali all the time, but in that particular moment, he was steeped in the galut mentality, in the diaspora mentality. And I'll explain. Forensic science is predicated on the notion, right? CSI, crime scene investigations, is predicated on the notion that when two things come in contact, they're going to leave an impression on each other. So if a criminal steps on the carpet, there's going to be some carpet fabric on his shoe, some traces of carpet fabric on his shoe, and likely somewhere on the carpet an impression of his body weight and shoe, and you put the two and two together and voila, you found your criminal. Two things that come in contact always leave an impression on each other. The Jewish people came in contact with galut, with diaspora. And so by definition, we have left our impression on the diaspora, on the world at large, and the world at large, to some extent, obviously, has had to impress us as well. There are certain things that we gave to the world, and certain things that the world gave to us. Right, so, we gave to the world monotheism, spread much, much more once the Gola started. A disproportionate number of Nobel Prize winners are Jewish, right? Ideas, Marx and Freud and Einstein, given the world. And the world also, the diaspora has impressed us, right? Now, some of those impressions have caused us to change and mutate our natural, authentic selves. We've changed. And as we come back to Israel after all these years, we have to figure out what strands of our behavior are genuine and authentic to being Jewish, and what are strands that were imposed upon us from the crime scene. So for example, for thousands of years, Jews were not allowed to own land in the diaspora, in Galut. And so the Jewish people were not thought of as agricultural savants. They weren't exactly educated in agriculture, and they weren't considered skilled in being able to farm and yield produce, because they weren't allowed to own land. But in truth, the Jewish people are very much deeply entrenched in the world of agriculture. Our Chagim, Chag Aviv, Chag Asif, Chag Katzir, Chag Asif, it's all centered around agriculture. We're intrinsically, and we used to be a people of agriculture, and we're returning to that. But perhaps the most tragic impression that the Galus has left on us, that the Galut, the diaspora, the least authentic strand, right, and the most dangerous, the most prevalent strand that was impressed upon us while we were in Galut, was the Galut itself, the diaspora itself. The notion that we belong in that place. The Judaism is a religion, the Judaism is a culture, but Judaism is not a nationality. There's no homeland necessarily connected to Judaism. Just a few minutes ago we sang Nachamu Nachamu. It's a fascinating historical fact. In 1920, Sir Herbert Samuel, a Jew from the British Empire, was appointed High Commissioner of Israel, of the province of Israel. It was the first time that a Jew was governing the state of Israel, not yet the state of Israel, the province of Israel, the area of Israel, since Gedalia ben Achikam. So Herbert Samuel was instrumental also 3 years prior in pushing forth for the Balfour Declaration, the declaration that we see with favor the establishment of a Jewish state in Israel. We see with favor the return of the Jews to their land. So Herbert Samuel was instrumental in that. And he came to Israel in the summer of 1920 to take up his position. And when he spent his first Shabbos in Yerushalayim, it was Shabbos Parshas Nachum. Right after Tisha B'Av, and he went to Yerushalayim 1920. He's in the Korva synagogue, which today is rebuilt, but for many years it was desolate. And they call up Sir Herbert Samuel as he's walking through the streets. So people are like looking. They call up Sir Herbert Samuel from Maftir. Imagine British High Commissioner, grew up Orthodox, sidetracked a little bit from Orthodoxy, but well versed enough in the Navi that he calls up, he says the brachas and the Haftarah, and he reads the words, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. And the people are like bawling. This is the end. Geula is coming. And Ezra Weitzman goes out and he calls to the Jewish people, come home. And this is it. The people of Israel, come home. Crickets. Silence. Nobody responds to the call. Home? What are you talking about? I'm home. In New York, in Poland, in Hungary, Pennsylvania, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, Germany, but I'm home. What are you talking about? Come home. Why did that happen? It's the Galut mentality of you don't have to be in Israel to be Jewish. It's not really a part of being Jewish. It happens to be that we lived in Israel, but that's not an authentic strand. That's from the crime scene. We just got so used to traveling around and moving that we thought, yeah, we could continue to exist without our homeland. You don't need Israel. You don't need a homeland. Wherever you are is your homeland. But it's not authentic Judaism. Authentic Judaism is being here, if not physically, with your heart, with the recognition that this is your home. It can't happen for all the people all the time. That's part of the price that we pay for the long exile, that sometimes there's factors that deter us from being here, but everyone should know. And in your hearts, you should know that your heart belongs here. Your body belongs here. If you can't make it, it happens. But your first priority should be Israel always. There's a halacha that says that when people come collecting money for tzedakah, so normally you're supposed to give to the people of your city before you give to, but there's a trump card for that. Israel trumps that. You give to the people of Israel because that's your home. That's your city. That's your home field. But there's been so many years that we kind of forget it sometimes. Sometimes it makes us feel uncomfortable. I'm sure right now there are some people in this room, and I don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable, but some people might be uncomfortable with what I'm saying. Might disagree. I'm sorry. I apologize if that's the case, but I'm telling you the truth. This is your home. So sometimes people say it's not so impractical, but like my life is there, friends are there. So the Torah itself tells us that we're not always about the most practical people. In a few weeks we're going to read Parshas Bahar. Parshas Bahar opens up with the laws of Shemitah. And the Medrash says, Ma'in and Shemitah. Like, what are you talking about Shemitah in the middle of Har Sinai? Like, what's that all about? So non-relevant right now. Right? And like all of us, like, why are you signaling out Shemitah so? Hashem was telling us a message. Even things that seem irrelevant. Shemitah would not come into play for another 61 years after they heard the words. For 6 years you shall work, and then the 7th year leave the land family. 61 years. It must have seemed like in the desert, nothing around, no land. What are you talking about even? Hashem is teaching us that even things that seem impractical, it seems so far away. But it's part of your life. And it will eventually fall into place. For thousands of years, starting with the year 70 CE. 70 CE was someone else. The destruction, people are like saying the words, bless you God and thank you for the food and the land. What are you talking about the land? You were just kicked out of the land. And we continue saying, at a wedding, when it seemed so improbable, people were saying, Lashana Abba Yerushalayim. What are you talking about, Lashana Abba? It seems so improbable. Because that's part of authentic Judaism. Thank God for those impractical people that actually believe that we're here today. Because of the few impractical people that stayed authentic. Right? So when Zev says to Eli, it's not home. An American also lives at home. It's not true. American only considers America home so long as he lives there. And even if he moves out and he still thinks, but I lived in American, his kids won't think that anymore. My mother came from Hungary. Not like my grandmother, my mother grew up in Hungary. I love Rocket Krukli. I could give you a few courses in Hungarian. I don't, in no way, shape, or form, consider myself Hungarian. Not once has it crossed my mind that I'm Hungarian. I see advertisements like you could get a Hungarian passport. Portability. Like Poland. Okay, so you might say, well, obviously you don't want to go back to Poland. My grandmother was Poland. Polish. Lived there for hundreds of years with our family. Not once have I entertained a thought. I feel Polish. But a Jew, no matter where he is in the world, home is Israel. Ironically, Zev was trapped in this gullus mentality, living in Yehuda v'Shomron, living in Israel. But he made a gullet statement. Home is where you live. No, home is not where you live. When the Jew says that Israel is home, it's a sincere expression of authentic Judaism. Part of our Judaism is religion, culture, and land. In 1945, in Buchenwald, April in Buchenwald, the end of the war was almost in sight. There's a boy named Lulik. You probably know him more as Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, former chief rabbi of Israel. Lulik is in Buchenwald. They convinced his older brother Naftali that miraculously has managed to survive with him and has been caring for him at the charge of his mother. his older brother Naphtali, Tulik, managed to lie and say he's Polish, so that they put him in a different prisoner block 8, so that he'll have slightly better conditions. Not great conditions, but better conditions. But Naphtali, Tulik, he's in the Jewish block and he's withering away. A walking corpse in Buchenwald. And it's April, and it's 2 weeks before the liberation. And they announced to the prisoners, to the Jewish prisoners, we're going to take you away. Before being taken away, Tulik runs to his brother Naphtali. He runs to his brother Yisrael Meir, Lulik. He runs to his brother. His brother is 8 years old. Yisrael Meir is 8 years old at this time. Yisrael Meir is 8 years old. He calls him from behind the barbed wire fence. Barely audible. He says, listen to me. I'm being taken away and I don't know if I'll ever see you. I'm being taken away and I don't know if I'll ever see you. I want you to remember the following 2 words. Eretz Israel. Say it after me, please. Eretz Israel. Rav Jake says in his book, Out of the Depths, read it, page 60, I think. I didn't speak any words of Hebrew. I didn't know any words of Hebrew. The only 2 words in Hebrew I knew are Eretz Israel. He says, listen to me. 2 words, Eretz Israel. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm probably not. So I don't know if you're going to make it. It's like, but there are people here that are still trying to care for you, take care of you. And the war is going to end soon. And after the war, there are going to be people that are going to say, come with me. Theodore was a Russian that was taking care of me. Theodore is going to want to care for you. And people are going to want to take you. Say, there's only one place you're going. Tell them you're going to Eretz Israel. Repeat after me. Say the words, Eretz Israel. He said it over and over again. Okay, Tulik. Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel. Right, in the middle of the most galut moment of your life, in the middle of Buchenwald, surrounded by dead bodies, recognizing that an authentic Jew has a home. Eretz Israel. Hashem Rishon Elam made it here. His brother did too. Very miraculous story. Read the book. King Chief Rabbi. The 39th rabbi in the long chain of rabbis, but no longer in diaspora. In the most authentic Jewish home that you have in Eretz Israel.